Hell's Angel President gang member in court. Gang of Three. Kenneth Hill, Jomar Robinson, and Darius Diaz-Gaskin were brought before Macomb Circuit Court for trial together, where each was found guilty of first-degree murder, armed robbery, illegal firearm possession, and conspiracy to commit an armed robbery. Losing someone dear can be heartbreaking, and we offer our condolences to their family and friends. Violent crime impacts individuals and communities immensely, and it is crucial that solutions exist to reduce such senseless acts. In this instance, all four perpetrators were found guilty on multiple charges pertaining to this armed robbery spree, emphasizing their gravity of actions and conspiring together in perpetrating such crime with firearms in possession. This only compounded its impact further. Gang violence and crime is often driven by factors like poverty, limited educational or job opportunities, and need for protection or belongingness. We should recognize these underlying issues and work towards finding effective ways of resolving them. Shane Thompson. Shane Thompson of Indianapolis was recently sentenced to 110 years of incarceration for his involvement in a brutal murder and other related offenses. Thompson was only 20 when he committed these acts in September 2013, working the night shift at a BP Rickers gas station when Aveli Nade, 39 years old at the time, was murdered. Thompson also pleaded guilty to robbing that location as well as another at 71st Street and Keystone Avenue. But that wasn't all. Thompson also admitted his involvement in a home invasion which occurred on September 9, 2013. His crimes were inexcusable and violent. They resulted in the tragic loss of an innocent life. Marion County Prosecutor Terry Curry offered his condolences to Aveli Nade's family, noting how her life was taken while simply doing his job, an action taken against Thompson by this court for which his punishment truly reflects. Thompson will likely spend the remainder of his natural life behind bars after being sentenced to 110 years by Indiana Department of Corrections for murder, robbery, burglary, and criminal confinement charges he committed against someone. It was evident to the court that Thompson's actions weren't taken lightly by them. Remembering the consequences of our crimes when committing acts that harm both others and ourselves can be life-altering. Thompson will likely live with the long-term effects of his choices for years. Remember the consequences of our actions on others. Aveli Nade's family and friends will never recover from his senseless murder. Let's all do our part in creating a safer and fairer society for everyone. George Joel Thomas. Thomas was among 16 individuals facing trial for crimes committed between 2006 and 2010, such as killings, conspiracy to kill, racketeering, and racketeering. Thomas' trial concluded at Western Cape High Court, where 6 other gangsters received life prison terms as part of an agreement reached during this trial. Under the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, all convicts were brought up on charges for their participation in these crimes. Thomas himself will face 7 life sentences simultaneously for crimes he masterminded over this time period. Judge Chantel Fortuyn presided over this case and reported that Thomas and his accomplices showed no remorse for their acts that were carried out deliberately with an aim of inducing fear in the community. At its core, gang violence and organized crime can have devastating ramifications on communities. Thomas' actions not only resulted in multiple deaths, but also caused severe disruption within his locality, prompting fear among its inhabitants as he brought harm and fearful acts into play. Importantly, individuals like Thomas often exploit vulnerable communities and individuals for criminal gain. Tackling issues related to poverty, lack of access to education or job opportunities, and social inequality could prevent organized crime from spreading its devastating impact. Christopher Ennis. Christopher Ennis was recently given 90 to 100 years behind bars for sexually assaulting multiple women. Ennis was initially charged with 8 assault-related counts. However, as part of a plea bargain, he entered no contest pleas to 2 assault charges as an alternative way out. This deal allowed his victims to avoid testifying, as many had suffered flashbacks and nightmares related to Ennis that left them fearing men altogether. Ennis was responsible for numerous attacks between 2009 and 2013, with victims reporting being attacked while walking near 27th and Maple. Prosecutors allege that Ennis approached his targets from behind before seizing them, making him what some have termed a wolf in sheep's clothing. Ennis may appear harmless at first glance. However, according to prosecutors, many of his victims can no longer lead a normal life due to trauma they've endured, described by one victim who spoke at court as an overwhelming feeling or not a good feeling. Ennis was given 2 consecutive terms of 45 to 50 years each. meaning he will serve 45 years before qualifying for parole eligibility. This punishment accurately represents his crimes. Sexual assault is an awful crime with lasting repercussions for its victims, making us all less safe as a result. By supporting and believing victims who come forward with their stories of assault and holding perpetrators accountable, we can create a safer world. Frank Freshwaters. Frank Freshwaters was finally captured after 56 years on the run. After successfully escaping prison several times during that period, his most audacious escape taking place from Ohio State Reformatory, used for filming Shawshank Redemption in 1959. Freshwaters had been found guilty of vehicular manslaughter and received a suspended prison sentence of 1 to 20 years. However, he violated his probation by getting a driver's license, leading him to return to incarceration 2 years later at Sandusky Honor Farm, from which he managed to break free after serving only 7 months of his original 20-year term. Freshwaters went by the alias William H. Cox after fleeing and worked as a truck driver across several states before retiring in Florida, living a normal life until authorities caught up to him and took action against him. An Ohio cold case unit tracked Freshwaters over several decades until he arrived in Brevard County, Florida, where he lived under an assumed identity. Deputies were called out and approached Freshwaters outside his trailer, showing his 1959 mugshot to him. They asked for him to admit who he was before taking custody again for all crimes he had been accused of and admitting everything himself. Freshwaters was arrested by agents from the U.S. Marshal Service and taken to Brevard County Jail on an outstanding fugitive from justice warrant, before later being extradited back to Ohio on charges for escape from prison. Freshwaters' arrest wasn't his only brush with law since his escape in 1959. Earlier, he had been taken into custody based on an Ohio warrant, but released without extradition by a West Virginia judge, and eventually disappeared once more. Freshwaters' case stands as a stark reminder that criminal law will eventually find them, no matter how long they go undetected under false identities. His capture after 56 years on the run should serve as a cautionary tale, and serve to remind fugitives that law enforcement authorities won't stop searching until all potential offenders have been caught and arrested. Michael Eugene Moore. Michael Eugene Moore, a Virginia fugitive who was arrested after being on the run for 26 years. Michael Eugene Moore was featured on the TV show America's Most Wanted 2 decades ago. He was accused of stabbing his wife repeatedly and abducting their 5-year-old daughter in March of 1996. The child was later found in Miami and returned to her mother in Richmond, Virginia. However, Moore remained a fugitive. Recently, the Flagler County Sheriff's Office arrested Michael Eugene Moore after a 3-hour standoff with deputies in Florida. The Sheriff's Office says a license plate reader detected a stolen vehicle, and deputies signaled the driver to stop in Palm Coast, south of Jacksonville. However, Moore didn't want to get out of the car and surrendered only after the sheriff called in a SWAT team. According to authorities, Michael Eugene Moore will serve more than 20 years behind bars. He was charged with carjacking and sentenced to 50 years, with 35 years suspended. He was also charged and convicted of abduction with a sentence of 10 years. Additionally, Moore was charged with the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, a sentence that carries 3 years for the offense, and by law requires 5 years for the second. The abduction charge is running concurrently with the carjacking charge. In total, Moore will serve 23 years in prison. Michael Eugene Moore's estranged wife, Amanda Moore, said, "I'm happy to hear that he's off the streets for good now." She said she had to relocate her kids multiple times because Moore knew where they were at all times. She was always scared and looking over her shoulder. She added that she wanted to commit suicide by cop, but the authorities convinced her not to talk to him or give him attention. It's shocking to hear that someone can remain a fugitive for 26 years, but it's also inspiring to see law enforcement agencies' determination to capture such fugitives and bring them to justice. Thanks for watching the video till the end. If you liked today's video, subscribe to our channel and hit the like button for more updates.